Want to know why? Ask how. Howard the Humongous. Something disturbing has been raising its head this week that's actually been with us for a long time. It's the politics of lies. It's been raising its head with the ISIS crisis, the crisis in Iraq. It's been raising its head with something called the Space Launch System. And it's been raising its head with something else, a weapon system, called the Global Hawk. First, the ISIS crisis. Former Vice President Dick Cheney came out with an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal explaining that the mess in Iraq, the invasion of ISIS, the threat to the city of Baghdad, is all Barack Obama's fault. It's Barack Obama's fault for pulling American troops out of Iraq. Apparently, Dick Cheney has a very bad memory, or he is deliberately lying. The person who determined that American troops would be pulled out of Iraq was George Bush. In 2008, George Bush signed a status of forces agreement with the Iraqis. It only gave America permission to keep its troops in Iraq until approximately January 1st of 2011. At that point, America, according to this agreement, was going to have to pull its troops out. George Bush and his administration worked extremely hard to fashion a new status of forces agreement that would allow Americans to stay in Iraq past January 1st of 2011. They were unsuccessful. This meant that under the Bush administration, we were going to have to pull our troops out of Iraq. It's not just Cheney who is claiming that the mess in Iraq is all Obama's fault. It is the entire Republican Party, the entire conservative wing. They seem to forget that we invaded Iraq, that we dismantled the Ba'ath Party of Saddam Hussein, that we took apart the army of Iraq, that we left Iraq basically in the hands of the Iranians. Nouri Al-Maliki, who heads Iraq, is an Iranian puppet. And then we turned our backs and began to scuttle away from the situation under George Bush. But the lying is not entirely taking place on the right. The lying is also taking place on the left. Barack Obama, in his campaign against, oh God, what's his name? The Republican candidate who ran against him, the son of the head of American Motors. At any rate, during the political campaign of 2012, Barack Obama toured the country, crowing that he had lived up to his campaign promise and had pulled us out of Iraq. That was a misstatement. Yes, the pullout occurred under Barack Obama, but it had been determined under George Bush. In addition, Barack Obama's State Department worked extremely hard to fashion a new status of forces agreement that would have allowed us to keep approximately 5,000 troops in Iraq. They failed. Why did they fail? Because Nouri Al-Maliki, the head of Iraq, is an Iranian puppet. And the Iranians told him point blank that he could not, they would not allow him to sign a status of forces agreement that would allow American troops to stay in what was rapidly becoming an Iranian backyard, an Iranian province. But that's not only the big instance of lying in politics this week. Richard Shelby testified. Richard Shelby, the senator from Alabama, testified before the Senate that he was adding a provision to an appropriations bill that would protect America's ability to get into space and would provide additional transparency in private space programs like the space programs of Elon Musk. Richard Shelby was lying. Richard Shelby backs a program called the Space Launch System. The Space Launch System was cobbled together by senators and congressmen, not engineers. It was cobbled together out of used space shuttle parts. It is a rocket too expensive to fly. It is costing us approximately $3 billion a year to develop this rocket. The rocket's budget is sucking the air out of the room for other programs, like the roughly $400 million. That's a small fraction of $3 billion that is going into something called Commercial Crew, the program that that is currently buying cargo services from Elon Musk. Elon is sending his Dragon capsule up to the space station and back, carrying cargo to the space station, then taking unused science experiments and other cargo from the space station and bringing it safely back to Earth. Elon Musk has the only American vehicle capable of doing that today. We have had a space gap since 2011. We have not been able to get Americans into space on American vehicles. We have been funneling $4 billion into Vladimir Putin's space program to pay him to take our Americans to the International Space Station on Russian Soyuz rockets. This is a bloody goddamned shame. This is the kind of thing that destroys the spirit of a nation. And Richard Shelby is the leader of the pack in destroying the American space program and in destroying America's spirit. He is trying to bleed, not just bleed the funding from the program that supports SpaceX's Dragon capsule. SpaceX, 2 weeks ago, Elon Musk revealed a Dragon version 2 that's capable of carrying 7 people to the International Space Station. That could be going up in a year if Congress would only leave the budget at the level that NASA asks for. And it's a low budget. It's a sixth the amount of money that is being used, wasted, for the Space Launch System. A rocket that will be too expensive to fly, that might in its entire lifetime fly 4 times at a total cost of $30 billion, which is something like $7.5 billion per flight. That's outrageous. That's crippling the United States of America. And when Richard Shelby was talking about transparency, what he was referring to is a little line that he stuck into an appropriations bill that says that companies like SpaceX and the other competitors for space taxis and expensive access to the International Space Station on American aircraft, Richard Shelby poked in a line that said that those private companies would have to follow the same accounting procedures that are used by Boeing, Northrop Grumman, and Lockheed Martin. What's wrong with those accounting programs? Those accounting programs take a toilet seat that should cost approximately $7.50 and inflate its cost to $1,250 because you have to maintain a full-time accounting staff in order to comply with the government regulations. That Shelby trumpets as transparency? No, this is red tape. Shelby's a Republican. He's supposed to be against government. He's supposed to be against red tape. He has just done his best to impose so much red tape on SpaceX and Sierra Nevada and the other companies in the private market that are vying to get us inexpensively into space, that they won't be able to get us inexpensively to space. He is trying to make the cost, he's trying to balloon the cost through accounting tricks to make sure that SpaceX's shuttle, which can get Americans into space at $20 million per seat, as opposed to the Space Launch System, which is closer to $1 billion per seat, as opposed to the Russians, which is $71 million per seat. Richard Shelby is trying to make sure that SpaceX is weighed down in so much red tape that it can no longer get us Americans into space at $20 million, that it too has to charge $100 million to get Americans into space. Why? He's trying to protect the Space Launch System. And the Space Launch System program is the reason that we do not have access to space on American vehicles now. The more Richard Shelby weighs down SpaceX with red tape, the longer it will take us to get back into space on American rockets. We could be back in a year. Shelby wants to make sure that since his Space Launch System, his cherished dinosaur, won't be able to get Americans into space until something like 2022, that Elon Musk is delayed until 2022 too. That's killing America's space program. That's killing America's spirit. That is Richard Shelby using the politics of lies. But that's not the only place where the politics of lies is being used. The military has been using a plane called the U-2 spy plane since 1956. The plane was totally rebuilt and up to approximately twice its original size in the 1980s. It's been continuously upgraded since then. However, there is a program called the Global Hawk. It is an unmanned vehicle, a huge unmanned vehicle. And it is also competing for the space, the niche of being able to be our ultimate spy plane. But it has a few problems. It carries 1/2 the payload of sensors that the U-2 carries. It flies at 50,000 feet. The U-2 flies at 70,000 feet. The higher you fly, the less likely you are to be shot down by an enemy missile. You fly 20,000 feet lower, and you are that much more vulnerable. And the Global Hawk has another problem. It can't be flown in bad weather. Now, if you're a military person, if you're a soldier, depending on the intelligence you get from the sensors in the sky of the Americans, our sensors in the sky, and when rain comes, when there's a storm, you can't get any intelligence whatsoever, you're blinded about what your enemy is doing, that means the Global Hawk is killing you, not helping you, because it can't fly in bad weather. Now, the Global Hawk is designed to handle the Pacific and Asia. It's designed to handle China, Japan, Taiwan, North Korea. Those countries are perpetually devastated by bad weather. The Pacific has bad weather systems all over the place. Just look at a satellite image. You'll see these giant swirls of tornadoes, of the equivalent of hurricanes. Named slightly differently to give them Asian names, but they are typhoons. They are monster weather systems. The Global Hawk can only fly in good weather. The Global Hawk has the potential to kill American soldiers. The Global Hawk has the potential to kill you and me, because we're entering a new age of superpower rivalry with China. And if the folks who support the Global Hawk want the U-2 taken out of service now, the U-2 has another 25 years to go in terms of the worthiness of its airframes. And it's a great spy plane. It's a fabulous spy plane. Why in the world would a bunch of congressmen and senators want to take the U-2 out of service and replace it with something that's crippled and blind? Because the something that's crippled and blind, the Global Hawk, gorgeous as it looks, provides jobs in 45 states, provides over 100,000 jobs. It is a pork barrel project. That means that the senators and congressmen who support it are supporting pork over your life and mine. They are supporting pork over the long time survival of the United States of America. They are supporting pork over the lives of the men and women who volunteer to fight for this country. This is outrageous. This is the politics of lies. And there's an even bigger instance of this. It's a little plane, a fighter plane, called the F-35. It is designed to be the fighter plane with which we fly in the future. It has a couple of small problems. It has cost $400 billion. The planes, the total program will cost $1 trillion. That's 1/16 our entire gross domestic product.
Just for this one plane. And some experts say that a MiG, a Chinese or Russian MiG from 1951 could easily, in a dogfight, put the F-35 out of action totally, could shoot it from the sky. Our congressmen and our senators are using the politics of lies to kill the future of America. And it is time for them to stop. This is Howard the Among Us, speaking to you from the future. It's your job and my job to make
And now for that scurrilous little off button. I've got it.